In this book, you'll uncover how tiny, everyday habits have the power to reshape your identity and transform your life over time. It explains why small changes, when repeated consistently, lead to remarkable results, and how focusing on the process rather than the outcome is key to lasting success. You'll learn practical strategies to build good habits, break bad ones, and design your environment to make change easier. Grounded in science and real world examples, this guide shows how mastering habits is the secret to unlocking continuous growth and true personal transformation. Introduction: My story, how I discovered the surprising power of small habits. I never imagined that a single moment could fracture my life so completely. It was the beginning of my sophomore year in high school, and I was just like any other teenager, busy with classes, friends, and dreams of athletic success. Baseball was a huge part of my identity, and I had ambitions of becoming a standout player. But everything changed in an instant. During a routine baseball game, a teammate lost grip of a bat during a warm up swing, and it struck me directly in the face. I didn't see it coming. The bat smashed into me with terrifying force. The blow shattered my nose, broke the bones around my eyes, and left me with a serious brain injury. I was immediately rushed to the hospital and placed into intensive care. I lost consciousness, and for the next few days, my life hovered in uncertainty. When I woke up, everything felt different. My face was swollen beyond recognition. I couldn't breathe on my own. Tubes were feeding me oxygen and fluids. My vision was blurry, and I could barely move. I had no idea how long recovery would take, just that I was no longer the person I was before. The weeks that followed were filled with confusion and frustration. I had to relearn how to perform basic tasks, walking in a straight line, holding a pencil, even thinking clearly. My body was weak and my mind felt foggy. Eventually, I left the hospital and began the long, slow road to recovery, but returning to normal life wasn't easy. When I went back to school, I felt like a stranger. I was behind in my classes, out of shape, and far from the athlete I used to be. I had lost my momentum. Everything that once came easily now felt like an uphill climb. I struggled with focus, self confidence, and energy. There were moments when I doubted whether I would ever catch up, let alone thrive. But something inside me refused to quit. I didn't have a plan for greatness, I just wanted to get better. So I focused on what I could control: small improvements. I started going to bed earlier. I made a schedule to stay organized. I lifted light weights a few times a week. I tried to pay more attention in class. I began writing, journaling my progress and thoughts, trying to make sense of everything. None of these actions were dramatic. No single change was groundbreaking. In fact, most of them were so minor that they seemed irrelevant. But over time, those small steps added up. I became stronger. I got better at managing my time. My grades began to improve. Slowly but surely, I regained a sense of confidence. My identity began to shift, not all at once, but gradually, as my actions aligned with the person I wanted to become. By the time I graduated, I was named the top male athlete at my school. I had earned academic honors and was offered the opportunity to play baseball at the college level. It wasn't because I had exceptional talent. It wasn't because I had better resources or luck than anyone else. It was because I had built a system of small, daily improvements and stuck to it. The most valuable lesson I learned wasn't about discipline or ambition. It was about the power of small habits. I realized that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. You don't need to change everything at once. You just need to start small. One habit, one decision, one moment at a time. And once those small habits compound, they lead to results that are truly life changing. I didn't plan for any of this, but looking back, the accident that nearly destroyed me became the catalyst for a deeper understanding of how change works. Not through radical transformation, but through small, consistent, invisible steps that add up over time. That experience didn't just shape my recovery, it shaped my worldview. It taught me that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. I learned that success is not about intensity, it's about consistency. It's about showing up again and again, even when the progress is slow and the results are invisible. This isn't just a story about recovery. It's a story about identity, effort, and the quiet power of daily practice. It's proof that no matter how far off course you feel, no matter how broken or behind you think you are, change is always possible. if you're willing to start small. The fundamentals: why tiny changes make a big difference. Chapter 1: The surprising power of atomic habits. It's easy to think that success requires massive action, a huge breakthrough, a life altering decision, or an inspiring burst of motivation that turns everything around overnight. That's the story we love to hear. It's dramatic, exciting, and satisfying. But the truth is far less glamorous and yet far more powerful. Real change starts with small habits, tiny decisions, quiet routines, invisible progress. When I first started paying attention to habits, I didn't realize just how influential they could be. Like most people, I believed that goals, ambition, and motivation were the key drivers of success. But over time, I began to see a different pattern. The most consistent, successful people I knew weren't always the most talented or the most driven. They were the ones who stuck with small improvements, day in and day out. No fanfare, no big moments, just persistence. Um, to understand how this works, think of a plane taking off from Los Angeles on its way to New York. If the pilot adjusts the flight path just a few degrees, barely noticeable to anyone on board, the plane doesn't land in New York. It lands in Washington, D.C. That tiny shift, multiplied over time and distance, leads to a completely different destination. That's what tiny habits do. They steer your life in a new direction, even if it feels like nothing is changing at first. We often don't notice the effects of small habits because the results are delayed. You can go to the gym for a week and see no physical change. You can read every day for a month and still feel behind. You can save a little money each week and still feel broke. But all the while, you're laying the groundwork for something bigger. Habits are the interest on your daily behavior. They compound slowly and silently until one day they erupt into something remarkable. That breakthrough moment, it's not sudden. It's just the tipping point of all the small decisions that came before it. This idea that habits compound is one of the most powerful realizations I've ever had. A 1% improvement doesn't feel like much. It's easy to ignore. But if you improve by just 1% each day for a year, you become 37 times better. Not 37%, 37 times. Conversely, if you get just 1% worse each day, the results can be just as dramatic, but in the wrong direction. The trajectory of your life is the product of your daily habits, not one-time events. Think about it this way. Your life right now is the outcome of the habits you've been practicing for years. Your fitness is a reflection of your workout and eating habits. Your knowledge is shaped by your reading and learning habits. Your relationships are influenced by the way you communicate, listen, and show up. And your bank account, that's a mirror of your spending and saving habits. Your outcomes are lagging indicators of your behavior. Change the behavior, and the results will eventually follow. This is where most people get stuck. We want fast results. We want transformation now. And when we don't see immediate improvement, we assume what we're doing isn't working. We quit the gym after a few weeks. We stop journaling. We drop the new habit because we can't see the payoff. But change is not linear. It's exponential. You're building potential, even if the outside world can't see it yet. Like ice sitting at 31-degree Fahrenheit, unchanged, unmoving, and then suddenly at 32 Fahrenheit, it melts. 1 degree made all the difference. But it was all the degrees before that one that made the change possible. This hidden phase is what I call the plateau of latent potential. It's the waiting period between action and results. It's where people often give up because it feels like nothing is happening. But underneath the surface, everything is happening. You're building a new identity. You're becoming the kind of person who shows up, who chooses consistency over intensity, who plays the long game. And that's the heart of it. Small habits shape your identity. Every time you perform an action, you're voting for the person you want to become. Do one push-up and you're casting a vote for someone who doesn't skip workouts. Write one sentence and you're a writer. Meditate for 1 minute and you're someone who values calm. These tiny votes, repeated daily, build up to something unshakable: belief. You start to see yourself differently, and when your identity shifts, your actions follow naturally. The phrase atomic habits captures all of this. They're atomic because they are small, just like atoms, the tiniest units of structure, but they're also powerful. Just as atoms can unleash enormous energy, these tiny changes can fuel massive transformation. They don't require extreme willpower or huge motivation. They require intention, a little patience, and a system that supports consistency. And that's the final truth I want to share in this chapter. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals are helpful for direction, but systems are what actually drive progress. You can set a goal to run a marathon, but if you don't have a habit of running each week, that goal is just a wish. You can hope to write a novel, but unless you sit down and write consistently, the words won't appear. Systems are what bridge the gap between desire and reality. So if you want to change your life, really change it, don't start with massive ambition or unrealistic resolutions. Start with small habits. Start with the smallest version of the change you want to make. Because it's not the big things that make a big difference. It's the little things, repeated, refined, and compounded over time. That's the surprising power of atomic habits. Chapter 2: How Your Habits Shape Your Identity, and Vice Versa. At the very heart of every meaningful change lies a question far more important than what you want to achieve. It's about who you want to become. When most people want to change their lives, they focus on outcomes, the things they want to get, or English. Maybe it's losing weight, writing a book, quitting smoking, or running a marathon. These goals are tangible and easy to measure. You can see the scale go down, pages added, cigarettes avoided, or miles run. But while outcomes are important, focusing on them alone is like trying to steer a ship by constantly checking the destination on the map without adjusting the rudder. You'll get lost, or worse, give up before you even reach your goal. What many overlook is that sustainable change goes deeper than goals or even habits. It starts with identity, the beliefs and stories you tell yourself about who you are. Your identity shapes your habits, and your habits reinforce your identity. It's a two-way street. Your habits influence your sense of self, and your sense of self guides your habits. Think about it. When you say, "I'm a smoker," you're not just describing a behavior, you're making a statement about your identity. This identity makes it incredibly difficult to quit, because quitting would mean changing who you believe yourself to be. On the other hand, if you start to see yourself as a non-smoker or as someone who values health and self-control, the actions you take naturally follow. You don't have to force yourself to quit. Your habits align with the identity you've adopted. This is the real power of identity-based habits. When your behaviors align with the kind of person you want to be, change becomes natural and even effortless. Your habits stop being chores or battles and instead become expressions of your identity. There are three layers of behavior change. One, outcomes, the results you want to achieve: lose weight, write a book, save money. Two, processes, the systems and habits that lead to those results: exercising regularly, writing daily, budgeting. Three, identity, the beliefs and self-image that underpin your behaviors: being healthy, being a writer, being financially responsible. Most people try to change from the outside in. They focus on outcomes and then try to adopt new habits to get there, hoping their identity will eventually catch up. But lasting change works the other way around. It begins with identity. You first decide the person you want to be, then prove it to yourself with small wins. Every action you take is like casting a vote for the type of person you believe you are or want to become. For example, if you want to be someone who exercises regularly, you don't start by saying, "I want to run a marathon." Instead, start with the identity: "I am a runner." Then take small steps that reinforce that identity: a 5-minute jog, choosing to walk instead of drive, signing up for a local race. Each of these actions confirms your identity as a runner. Over time, this identity solidifies, and running becomes part of who you are, not just something you do. The same applies in every area of life. Want to be a writer? Think of yourself as a writer. Write a single sentence each day. Want to be a more organized person? See yourself as organized. Tidy your desk, create a schedule, and stick to it. These small, seemingly insignificant actions shape your beliefs and your self-image. Your brain is constantly looking for ways to simplify the world and conserve energy. Once you adopt an identity, your habits follow automatically because your brain works to align your actions with your beliefs. This makes identity-based habits much more sustainable than those based purely on willpower or motivation, which tend to fade quickly. However, the process is not about perfection. Nobody is perfect, and identity change doesn't mean you never slip up or fail. Even if you miss a workout, skip a day of writing, or make a poor choice, it doesn't mean your identity is shattered. And the important thing is that you keep casting more votes for the person you want to become than against them. It's a process of continual reinforcement. The habits you build each day send a powerful message to yourself. This is who I am. If you repeat a behavior enough times, it becomes automatic. It becomes part of your identity, and your identity becomes part of the foundation for everything you do. On the flip side, bad habits work in the same way. Each time you skip exercise, reach for junk food, or procrastinate, you are casting a vote for an identity that's out of alignment with your goals. This can create a negative feedback loop where your behaviors and beliefs reinforce each other in a downward spiral. So the question is not just what habits you want to build, but what kind of person you want to become. Your habits are the means by which you embody your chosen identity. This shift in perspective from outcome based change to identity based change is a game changer. It changes how you think about habits and makes change less about sheer willpower and more about becoming. It creates a foundation where habits are no longer temporary fixes or chores, but expressions of who you truly are. If you want to build better habits and achieve lasting change, start by deciding the kind of person you want to be. Then, prove it to yourself with small actions every day. Over time, those actions build your identity, and your identity shapes your future. This is the secret behind the surprising power of habits. They don't just tell you what to do, they tell you who you are. And when your habits and identity align, lasting change becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Chapter 3: How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. Changing your habits often feels like a complex puzzle, a mysterious process only understood by experts or those with exceptional willpower. But when you break it down, habit formation is actually a simple, natural cycle your brain runs through over and over again. Once you understand this cycle, you gain a powerful tool to redesign your behaviors and build habits that last a lifetime. Every habit follows the same 4-step pattern: cue, craving, response, and reward. These steps are the fundamental building blocks of any behavior, whether it's brushing your teeth, checking your phone, or going for a run. By learning how each step works and how to influence them, you can start shaping your habits with intention instead of relying on chance or motivation. Step 1: Cue. The trigger that starts the habit. The cue is the very first spark, the trigger that tells your brain it's time to start this habit. It's the signal that initiates the entire habit loop. This cue can be almost anything: a place, a time of day, an emotional state, the presence of certain people, or a specific action that precedes your habit. For example, waking up in the morning might be the cue to make your bed. Seeing your running shoes by the door reminds you to exercise. Receiving a notification on your phone triggers you to check messages. Sometimes cues are obvious, sometimes they're subtle and unconscious. But the crucial point is this: if you can control your cues, you can control which habits get triggered. One of the most effective ways to build better habits is to make your cues obvious and clear. If you want to read more, place a book on your pillow or your desk where you can't miss it. If you want to drink more water, keep a water bottle in plain sight. The cue is your brain's way of preparing for the habit. When it's clear and consistent, it sets the stage for action. Step 2: Craving. The desire that motivates you. Once the cue signals your brain, it creates a craving, a desire or motivation to act. Cravings are the emotional or mental drivers behind habits. You don't perform habits just because of the cues themselves, but because of what you expect to get from acting on those cues. It's important to recognize that habits are not about the behavior itself. They are about the craving for a change in your state. When you check social media, it's not the endless scrolling that you crave. It's the feeling of connection, entertainment, or distraction. When you bite into a chocolate bar, you're seeking comfort, pleasure, or relief. This craving fuels your behavior. The stronger and more attractive the craving, the more likely you are to act. So, building better habits means making the craving desirable. You need to find ways to associate positive feelings and benefits with your new habits so your brain looks forward to performing them. For example, if you want to start exercising, imagine how great it feels afterward, the rush of energy, the pride, the accomplishment. If you want to eat healthier, focus on how good your body feels when nourished well, not on what you're giving up. Step 3, response, the actual habit or behavior. The response is the habit itself, the action you take in reaction to the craving. It could be a physical activity, a mental habit, or an emotional reaction. Whether you do it or not depends on how capable and motivated you feel at that moment. This step is where many people get stuck. Even if the cue is obvious and the craving strong, if the response feels too difficult or overwhelming, you're less likely to follow through. This is why making habits easy is crucial for success. The easier and more convenient you make the behavior, the more likely it will happen. For example, instead of trying to run 5 miles on day one, start with a 1 minute walk. Instead of committing to writing an entire chapter, write a single sentence. By reducing friction and breaking habits down into manageable chunks, you remove the barriers that stop you. Habits that feel too hard or complicated often lead to procrastination or giving up, but habits that are easy and accessible invite action. This is why habit stacking, linking a new habit to an existing one, and setting up your environment to support the habit are powerful strategies. Step 4, reward, the benefit that reinforces the habit. The reward is the payoff you get after completing the habit. It satisfies the craving that drove you to act and tells your brain whether this behavior was worth remembering. Rewards can be physical, emotional, or psychological. The taste of a delicious snack, the feeling of accomplishment, relief from stress, or a sense of pride. Rewards are critical because they close the habit loop and make it more likely you'll repeat the habit the next time the cue appears. Your brain remembers what feels good and seeks to recreate it. If a habit provides a satisfying reward, your brain will want to do it again. To build lasting habits, you need to make the reward immediate and satisfying. Delayed rewards, like long-term health benefits, don't motivate as much as instant feedback. That's why tracking progress, celebrating small wins, or pairing habits with enjoyable activities makes sticking to habits easier. For example, after finishing a workout, you might feel a rush of endorphins, a natural reward. After writing, you could take a moment to reflect on your progress or share your work with a friend. When you make rewards meaningful, you create a positive feedback loop that reinforces your habits. Putting it all together, designing habits that stick. These 4 steps, cue, craving, response, and reward, form a continuous loop that shapes your behavior every day. Habits start when your brain notices a cue, anticipates a reward, takes action, and then receives feedback that reinforces the habit. The secret to lasting change is to design each part of this loop carefully. Make cues obvious so your brain can't miss them. Make cravings attractive so you want to act. Make responses easy so you don't resist. Make rewards satisfying so you want to repeat. By actively shaping this process, you work with your brain's natural tendencies instead of fighting against them. This turns habit formation from a battle of willpower into a simple, repeatable system. For example, if you want to develop a habit of reading more, you might leave a book on your pillow as an obvious cue. Imagine the joy and knowledge you'll gain, making the craving attractive. Commit to reading just 1 page a day, making the response easy. Reward yourself with a small treat or a moment of relaxation afterward. Over time, these tiny changes build momentum. What starts as a single page becomes a chapter becomes a book, and a habit becomes part of your identity. Why this matters. Understanding these 4 steps transforms how you think about habits. It removes the mystery and frustration that often come with trying to change. Instead of relying on motivation alone, which is unpredictable and fleeting, you create a clear, actionable blueprint for success. This approach also helps explain why many New Year's resolutions fail. People try to change by sheer force without designing their habits to align with their brain's natural processes. They ignore cues, underestimate cravings, make responses too hard, and fail to reward themselves. As a result, their habits never stick. But when you learn to work within this framework, building better habits becomes less about willpower and more about design. You create a system that makes good behaviors inevitable and bad behaviors difficult. No matter what your goals are, whether improving health, boosting productivity, or cultivating creativity, mastering these 4 steps gives you the tools to make real, lasting change. It's not magic, it's science, and it's accessible to everyone. So start by identifying your cues. Notice your cravings, simplify your responses, celebrate your rewards. Step by step, day by day, you'll build habits that not only change your behavior, but transform your life. The first law: make it obvious. Chapter 4: The Man Who Didn't Look Right. There are moments in life when something doesn't sit right with you, even if you can't immediately put your finger on why. You might be walking down a busy street or sitting in a crowded room, and a person or a situation stands out, not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it subtly breaks the pattern of what's normal or expected. It's that faint but unmistakable feeling that something is different, something is off. Your brain picks up on these small discrepancies instantly, often before your conscious mind can even register them. This is how our attention is naturally drawn to what's obvious. The story of the man who didn't look right brings this idea to life in a compelling way. Imagine someone moving through the world with a subtle but undeniable difference, a way of walking, an unusual expression, or clothing that doesn't quite fit the environment. It's not necessarily alarming at first glance, but it's enough to trigger an internal alarm to make people take notice and be more alert. This man's presence wasn't hidden or subtle, it was obvious in a way that created awareness and attention. This story serves as a powerful metaphor for how habits begin and how the cues that trigger habits work in your brain. Habits don't start randomly, they start because of a cue, an environmental trigger that grabs your attention and signals your brain that it's time to act. These cues can be sights, sounds, feelings, or even specific times of day. The more obvious and unmistakable the cue, the more effective it is at prompting the habit. For example, say you want to start the habit of drinking more water throughout the day. If your water bottle is hidden inside a cupboard or out of sight, it's easy to forget. Your brain simply doesn't get the signal to act. But if you place a large water bottle right on your desk where it's impossible to miss, the cue becomes obvious. You see the bottle, your brain registers the signal, and you're much more likely to pick it up and take a sip. That simple shift, making the cue obvious, can be the difference between success and failure. This principle applies to all habits, whether good or bad. When cues for negative habits are obvious, they pull you back into old behaviors effortlessly. Consider the candy bowl sitting on the kitchen counter or your phone lighting up with notifications. These obvious cues grab your attention, triggering cravings and actions you may want to resist but often can't. Your environment is constantly sending signals that push you towards certain behaviors, often without your conscious awareness. This is why one of the most important steps in changing habits is environment design. By shaping your surroundings to highlight the cues that lead to positive behaviors and hide or reduce the cues that lead to negative ones, you create a physical and mental space that supports your goals. It's like setting up signposts on your path, clear, visible markers that guide you toward better choices without requiring endless willpower or motivation. The man who didn't look right was noticed precisely because his presence was obvious in a way that broke the normal pattern. Similarly, when you make your habit cues obvious in your daily life, you create a system that nudges your behavior in the right direction naturally and automatically. Your brain doesn't have to work hard to remember or decide. The cues are right there, prompting you effortlessly. This chapter reminds us that changing habits isn't just about trying harder or pushing through with willpower. Instead, it's about working with your brain's natural wiring, its preference for clear, obvious signals, and designing your environment so that good habits become the default option. For instance, if you want to read more books, don't store them on a high shelf out of sight. Leave one on your bedside table or your favorite chair where you relax. If you want to exercise regularly, lay out your workout clothes and shoes the night before, right where you'll see them in the morning. These simple changes make the cues impossible to miss, so your habits can start with a natural and obvious prompt. By focusing on making cues obvious, you eliminate one of the biggest obstacles to habit formation: forgetfulness or distraction. Your brain is busy and easily overwhelmed by the constant flow of information. If a cue isn't obvious, it gets lost in the noise and your habit never begins. But when the cue stands out clearly, when it's big, bright, and in your face, your brain pays attention and acts. In the bigger picture, this insight transforms how you approach behavior change. It's no longer about relying on fragile motivation or discipline, but about setting up your environment and routines so that the right actions are obvious, easy, and natural. It's about making good habits so visible and accessible that you don't have to think twice about them. Ultimately, The Man Who Didn't Look Right teaches us that obviousness is the foundation of habit formation. When cues are clear, habits follow. When cues are hidden or weak, habits fade away. If you want to build better habits that last, start by making your cues impossible to ignore. Make them obvious, because when your brain can't miss the signal, you're already halfway to success. Chapter 5: The Best Way to Start a New Habit. Starting a new habit can feel like preparing for a marathon when you've never even jogged around the block. The goal might seem exciting, but the path to get there looks overwhelming, intimidating, and uncertain. Many people want to improve their lives, yet most struggle at the very beginning. How do you take that first step when the entire journey ahead seems so vast and complex? The truth is, how you start a habit matters more than you might realize. The initial moments set the tone and create momentum for everything that comes after. If the beginning is confusing, difficult, or unstructured, you're more likely to quit before you've truly begun. But if the first step is simple, clear, and easy, it builds confidence and creates a foundation for long-term success. So, what is the best way to start a new habit? It's to make the start as small, specific, and effortless as possible. Instead of focusing on grand changes or huge goals, focus on tiny, manageable actions that require almost no willpower. This approach lowers the barrier to getting started and makes it far more likely that you'll follow through, even when motivation wanes. One of the most effective techniques to achieve this is called implementation intentions. This involves crafting a clear, detailed plan that answers the questions: when will I do the habit? Where will I do it? How exactly will I do it? Rather than vaguely saying, I want to exercise more, a better plan looks like, I will put on my running shoes and jog for 5 minutes around the block at 7 a.m. tomorrow. This precision removes uncertainty and excuses. Your brain can prepare itself to act because it knows exactly what to expect, when, and where. Another powerful strategy that builds on this idea is habit stacking. This is the practice of linking a new habit to an existing one, using a habit you already do as a cue to start the new behavior. For example, if you always brush your teeth in the morning, you might stack a new habit immediately afterward, like doing 5 push-ups or writing a single journal sentence. Because the existing habit is automatic and established, it acts as a reliable trigger, making it easier for your brain to incorporate the new habit into your routine. Starting small is not just a clever hack, it's grounded in how your brain and body actually work. When you begin with tiny versions of a habit, you face little resistance. Writing one sentence instead of a whole essay, meditating for 1 minute instead of 20, or walking for 1 minute instead of running for miles. These small steps don't feel overwhelming. They don't trigger procrastination or anxiety. Instead, they create a sense of ease and possibility. This is crucial because habits form when you repeat an action enough times that it becomes automatic. If the action is too difficult at first, you might never repeat it enough to get there. But when it's easy, you're more likely to do it consistently. That consistency is what eventually leads to big changes. Also, starting small protects you from the common trap of relying on motivation or willpower alone. Motivation fluctuates and can disappear, especially when life gets busy or stressful. Willpower is a limited resource and can be quickly drained. By reducing the size and effort of your starting action, you remove the need to rely on these unreliable forces. Instead, you create a system that works even when you don't feel like it. Once your habit is established in its simplest form, you can gradually build on it. This natural progression often feels effortless because the habit has become part of your identity. You don't have to force yourself to do more. You want to. You might increase your jogging time from 5 minutes to 10, or you're journaling from one sentence to a full page. This incremental growth happens without pressure or burnout because it's built on a foundation of consistency. An additional benefit of starting small and specific is that it builds your self confidence. Every time you complete your habit, even if it's tiny, you prove to yourself that you are capable. This positive feedback loop strengthens your belief in your ability to change, reinforcing your identity as someone who follows through and succeeds. Finally, don't forget to celebrate your progress, no matter how small it seems. Recognition and reward are powerful motivators that encourage your brain to repeat the behavior. Celebrate completing your first 5-minute walk, writing your first journal sentence, or making your first healthy meal. These celebrations help cement the habit loop by attaching positive emotions to your actions. In essence, the best way to start a new habit isn't to overhaul your entire life or rely on fleeting motivation. It's to make the first step crystal clear, tiny, and as easy as possible. This simplicity removes friction and excuses, builds momentum, and gradually transforms your life one small, consistent action at a time. When you approach habit formation this way, the mountain you face no longer feels insurmountable. Instead, it becomes a series of steps, each one bringing you closer to the summit. You don't have to conquer the entire mountain at once, you just have to start climbing. And starting small is the smartest, most effective way to begin. Chapter 6: Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. When it comes to changing your habits, there's a widespread belief that motivation is the secret ingredient, the magical spark that will push you to do what you want when you want. You might think, I just need to find the motivation to start exercising, or I'll eat healthy once I really feel ready. But here's the hard truth: motivation is unreliable. It's unpredictable and fluctuates constantly. Some days it's there, strong and vibrant. Other days it's weak or completely absent. Relying solely on motivation to change your habits is like trying to drive a car without gas. No matter how good your intentions, you won't get very far. This chapter reveals a more dependable force that shapes your behavior much more powerfully than motivation: your environment. The spaces, contexts, and social settings that surround you act as silent architects of your habits. They influence what you do, what you think about, and ultimately who you become, often without you even realizing it. When your environment is carefully designed to encourage positive habits and discourage negative ones, you don't have to rely on willpower or motivation to make progress. Your surroundings do much of the work for you. Imagine two people trying to eat healthier. One keeps a bowl of candy and chips on the kitchen counter, where it's easy to grab a snack. The other removes all junk food and places fresh fruit in a large, colorful bowl right on the dining table. It's not necessarily that one person is more motivated than the other. It's that their environment makes one choice easier and more obvious than the other. When unhealthy snacks are out in plain sight, temptation strikes effortlessly. When healthy options are the most visible and accessible, good choices become automatic. Your environment, like an ever present cue machine. Every day, countless cues from your surroundings nudge your behavior in subtle ways. If your phone constantly buzzes with notifications, you'll find yourself checking it repeatedly, often without conscious thought. If your workspace is cluttered and distracting, focusing on tasks becomes a battle of willpower. But when your environment is organized, minimal, and aligned with your goals, you create a smooth path for productive habits to flourish. Redesigning your environment is one of the most effective and often overlooked strategies to build lasting habits. This could mean small, practical changes: placing your gym clothes by the door so you see them first thing in the morning, keeping a water bottle on your desk to remind you to hydrate, or uninstalling distracting apps from your phone. Each adjustment lowers the friction between you and your desired behavior, making it easier to act even when motivation is low. Social surroundings also play a crucial role in shaping your habits. The people you spend the most time with influence what you value and how you behave. If your friends prioritize fitness, health, and growth, you're more likely to adopt similar habits. Conversely, if your social circle engages in behaviors that don't support your goals, it becomes harder to change. This is why carefully choosing your social environment, or even seeking out new communities that align with your values can accelerate your progress dramatically. What this means in practice is that you don't have to wait for the perfect burst of motivation to take action. Instead, focus on crafting an environment that makes your desired habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. By shaping your surroundings, you essentially set up a system where good behaviors become the natural default and bad behaviors become inconvenient or hidden. Motivation is a fluctuating and fragile resource, but a well designed environment provides a stable foundation. It supports you on days when you feel energized and on days when you don't. By controlling your environment, you're not trying to push yourself with willpower, you're creating conditions that naturally pull you toward success. Ultimately, this chapter teaches a powerful lesson. If you want to change your habits, change your environment first. The people you surround yourself with, the objects you keep within reach, and the spaces you inhabit all work together to shape your behavior. When you design your environment thoughtfully, you don't have to rely on motivation to show up every day. Instead, your habits follow effortlessly because your environment is doing the heavy lifting. So rather than waiting for motivation to strike, take control of the one thing you can control, your environment. Make it your greatest ally in building the habits that will shape the person you want to become. Chapter 7: The Secret to Self Control. When you think about self control, what usually comes to mind? Maybe you imagine a fierce internal battle, a test of willpower where you must fight off cravings, distractions, or impulses that threaten to pull you off course. Perhaps you picture yourself constantly resisting temptations, pushing yourself to say no to unhealthy foods, procrastination, or bad habits. While willpower does have a role, this chapter reveals a powerful and often overlooked truth. Self control is not mainly about exerting raw willpower, it's about shaping your environment so you never have to rely on willpower in the first place. This idea might seem surprising at first. After all, society often praises grit, discipline, and mental toughness as the keys to success. But the problem with willpower is that it's a limited, exhaustible resource. Every act of resisting temptation uses up some of your mental energy. By the end of a stressful day or after making countless decisions, your self control can be depleted, leaving you vulnerable to giving in. This phenomenon is called ego depletion, and it explains why people often slip up when they're tired, stressed, or distracted, not because they lack desire to change, but because their self control has run low. So, if willpower is fragile and finite, how do people with strong habits succeed? The answer lies in reducing exposure to temptation before it even arises. Instead of relying on heroic acts of resistance, they design their lives so that bad habits are difficult or impossible to act on. They make the cues that trigger unwanted behaviors invisible or inconvenient, thereby removing the opportunity to fail. For example, imagine you want to stop eating junk food. If you keep a stash of candy or chips right on your kitchen counter, the temptation is constant and difficult to resist. But if you remove those snacks from your home entirely or store them in a hard to reach place, you don't need to summon willpower every time a craving hits. You simply can't eat the junk food because it's out of sight and out of reach. This principle applies broadly. If you want to reduce mindless scrolling on your phone, uninstall distracting apps or turn off notifications. If you want to limit TV watching, unplug the device or move the remote control somewhere inconvenient. If you want to spend less time snacking, don't bring snacks into the house. These changes don't require self control, they require environmental engineering. The fewer opportunities for temptation, the less you have to fight. You're not relying on willpower, you're preventing the fight altogether. The chapter also explains how habits themselves conserve self control. When a behavior becomes habitual, it operates automatically, triggered by specific cues and requiring little conscious effort. This automation frees up your mental energy for other tasks and reduces the daily demand on your self discipline. The goal, then, is to create habits that run on autopilot, minimizing the moments when you have to make difficult decisions. In addition, your social environment has a huge influence on your self control. Humans are social creatures, and we tend to mirror the behaviors of those around us. If your friends and family engage in healthy habits, you're more likely to follow suit effortlessly. On the other hand, being surrounded by people who engage in unhealthy or distracting behaviors makes self control much harder. This is why choosing your social circle carefully can be as important as choosing your physical environment. Beyond removing temptations, the chapter encourages making good habits more obvious and appealing. When your environment highlights positive behaviors and makes them easy to do, you reduce the effort required to stay disciplined. For instance, leaving a book on your bedside table or placing workout clothes next to your bed acts as a gentle, obvious cue that guides you toward good habits without taxing your willpower. Another important insight is that self control isn't about perfection or constant vigilance. Even the most disciplined people slip up sometimes. The difference is that they structure their environment and habits so that those slips are less frequent and less damaging. They don't waste energy fighting every urge. Instead, they create conditions where the easier choice is also the better choice. This chapter reframes self control from being a heroic inner battle to being a strategic external design challenge. By taking control of your surroundings, your physical space, social circles, and routines, you create a supportive framework that protects your self discipline. You conserve your mental energy, reduce decision fatigue, and set yourself up for sustainable success. In the end, the secret to self control is not about willpower alone. It's about engineering your environment and habits so that temptations are minimized, good behaviors are encouraged, and your actions become automatic. This approach isn't just smarter, it's kinder and more realistic. Rather than battling yourself every day, you create a life where the right choices come naturally, without a constant struggle. By mastering this secret, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of temptation and resistance. Instead, you move forward with clarity and ease, making lasting changes that truly stick. This is the true power of self control. The second law: make it attractive. Chapter 8: How to Make a Habit Irresistible. Habits are much more than simple actions repeated over time. They are deeply tied to how you feel when you perform them. At the heart of every habit lies a craving, a pull toward the reward that the behavior promises. This craving is what makes some habits feel effortless and natural, while others fade away quickly. This chapter explores the powerful idea that if you want your habits to stick, you must first make them attractive so that you genuinely want to do them, not because you have to, but because you want to. Consider the habits you enjoy most in your life. Maybe it's the comforting routine of your morning coffee, the energizing walk you take after dinner, or the creative flow you experience while practicing a hobby. These are not just chores or obligations, they are sources of pleasure and satisfaction. This attraction is no accident, it's how your brain's reward system works. When a habit is attractive, your brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and anticipation. This dopamine release creates a craving that makes you want to repeat the habit again and again. The more attractive a habit feels, the more likely you are to stick with it. Conversely, if a habit feels dull, difficult, or punishing, your brain resists. You feel no desire to engage in it, and motivation wanes quickly. That's why so many good intentions fail, because the habits don't feel appealing enough to overcome inertia and distractions. So, how do you make a habit irresistible? One powerful strategy is temptation bundling. This clever technique involves pairing something you want to do with something you need to do. For example, you might allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast or audiobook only while exercising. This pairing transforms a habit that might feel like work into something enjoyable. Suddenly, your workouts become moments you look forward to because they are connected with a source of pleasure. Temptation bundling leverages your brain's natural desire for reward to make good habits more attractive. Another key factor in making habits attractive is your social environment. Humans are social creatures who are wired to imitate the behaviors of those around them. When you spend time with people who embody the habits you want, whether it's exercising regularly, eating healthily, or reading more, you're more likely to adopt those behaviors yourself. This happens because social acceptance and belonging are fundamental human needs, and engaging in group norms activates your brain's reward system. Being part of a community that values certain habits adds a powerful layer of attraction and motivation. Beyond external cues, the way you frame your mindset about a habit plays a huge role in its attractiveness. Instead of focusing on what you have to give up or the effort it requires, focus on the benefits and positive outcomes. For example, rather than thinking I have to stop eating junk food, reframe it as I get to fuel my body with nourishing foods that make me feel energized. This positive perspective makes the habit feel more appealing and motivates you to continue. You can also increase attractiveness by creating a ritual or making the habit itself more enjoyable. Adding music to your workout, creating a cozy reading nook, or rewarding yourself with a small treat after completing a task are all ways to boost the appeal. When the process itself becomes pleasurable, the habit gains momentum naturally. It's important to remember that making a habit attractive isn't about forcing yourself or relying solely on willpower. Instead, it's about understanding and tapping into the brain's deep wiring for pleasure, reward, and social connection. By aligning your habits with these natural drivers, you create an internal pull, a craving, that propels you toward your goals without constant struggle. This chapter makes it clear that the battle to change behavior is not won through brute force, but through smart design. You don't have to push yourself endlessly to complete habits you dislike. Instead, you can craft habits that feel good, make you excited, and resonate with your values and identity. When you succeed in making your habits attractive, resistance fades. The behaviors you want to adopt become magnets that draw you in, not burdens you drag along. This shift transforms habit formation from a chore into a natural, even enjoyable part of your daily life. In the end, making your habits irresistible is the secret ingredient to building lasting change. It's the reason some people effortlessly stick to routines while others struggle. By focusing on attraction, on craving and pleasure, you harness the full power of your brain's reward system, turning your goals into habits you truly want to keep. Chapter 9: The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits. Your habits are shaped not just by your own choices or environments, but significantly by the people you surround yourself with. Your family, friends, colleagues, and social groups play an enormous role in influencing your daily behaviors. From the moment you are born, humans learn by watching and imitating others. Babies instinctively mimic the facial expressions, sounds, and movements of their caregivers. This natural tendency doesn't disappear as you grow older. Instead, it evolves and continues throughout your entire life. Adults continuously absorb the behaviors, attitudes, and routines of those closest to them. This is no coincidence. Humans are wired to connect, belong, and fit in. Our brains are constantly picking up social cues and adapting to align with the expectations and norms of our community. One of the most powerful forces guiding your habits is the influence of social norms, the unwritten rules that dictate what behaviors are considered acceptable, normal, or desirable within your group. If your family and friends regularly engage in unhealthy eating, avoid exercise, or smoke, these behaviors become the default backdrop of your life, making it easy for you to follow the same patterns without much thought. On the other hand, if you are surrounded by people who prioritize fitness, healthy eating, personal growth, or regular reading, these positive behaviors feel like the natural norm. The desire to belong and be accepted by others can often be stronger than personal motivation or discipline, nudging you toward adopting habits that mirror those of your social circle. The influence of social groups on your habits goes beyond norms. It's contagious. Research shows that habits such as quitting smoking, losing weight, or even emotional states like happiness can spread throughout social networks. When a close friend changes their behavior, it can create a ripple effect, inspiring others in the circle to make similar changes. This means that by choosing to spend time with people who practice the habits you want to develop, you dramatically increase your chances of success. Being part of a community where good habits are the standard makes it easier and more natural to adopt those habits yourself. However, social influence is not only passive absorption. You can actively shape your social environment to better support your goals and desires. This might involve seeking out groups or communities that share your values and healthy habits, such as joining a running club, attending workshops, participating in book clubs, or connecting with like minded individuals online. It can also mean intentionally spending more time with people who inspire and motivate you while reducing contact with those who hold you back or encourage unhealthy patterns. By consciously curating your social network, you create a setting where your desired habits are not only accepted, but encouraged and celebrated, making them easier to adopt and maintain. Another critical factor that social connections provide is accountability. Sharing your goals and progress with family or friends adds a level of social responsibility that makes it harder to give up or revert to old habits. Knowing that someone else is watching your journey, cheering you on, or checking in on your progress helps strengthen your commitment. When people encourage you, celebrate your small wins, or offer gentle reminders when you slip, they create a support system that fosters perseverance and resilience. Yet, it's important to recognize that not all social influences are positive. Toxic relationships or unsupportive environments can sabotage your efforts to change. Being around people who criticize, discourage, or undermine your goals can make habit formation much more difficult. Recognizing when your social circle is detrimental is essential. It may require setting boundaries, limiting interactions, or seeking new friendships and communities that align better with your aspirations and values. Protecting your progress sometimes means making tough decisions about who you allow into your inner circle. Ultimately, your social world is one of the most powerful forces shaping your habits and your life. By understanding the depth of influence that family and friends have, you can harness social dynamics to your advantage. Embracing positive social norms, building connections with supportive groups, and fostering accountability partnerships give you a huge edge in creating lasting, meaningful habits. In summary, habits are not formed in isolation. They are the result of complex interactions between your own intentions, your physical environment, and most importantly, your social surroundings. By thoughtfully choosing and nurturing your relationships, you create a foundation for success that helps you become the person you want to be. Your social bonds aren't just part of your life, they are one of your greatest resources for transformation, providing the encouragement, example, and connection that fuel lasting change. The third law, make it easy. Chapter 10, walk slowly but never backward. Change is rarely a sudden, dramatic event. Instead, it is a gradual process built one small step at a time. The true power of transformation lies in the ability to keep moving forward, steadily and patiently, no matter how slow the progress seems. The wisdom here is simple but profound. Walk slowly but never backward. This means focusing less on how fast you move and more on the fact that you keep moving. Even the smallest forward movement compounds over time into massive change, while even a single step backward can undo much of your hard work. One of the most common reasons people fail to build lasting habits is that they try to do too much too quickly. When you attempt radical, sweeping changes, like completely revamping your diet, starting an intense exercise routine, and restructuring your entire schedule all at once, it often overwhelms your mental and physical capacity. The sheer scale of these changes can be discouraging, making it easy to give up entirely. The lesson here is that massive success does not require massive action every day. Instead, it requires making habits easy, approachable, and consistent. The key to making a habit easy is to reduce the friction that stands between you and the behavior you want to build. Friction is anything that makes it harder for you to take action. Extra steps, complicated routines, inconvenient setups, or a confusing process. The easier and more accessible you make a habit, the more likely it is to stick. For instance, if your goal is to write every day, creating a simple setup where your notebook or computer is ready and waiting makes starting easier. If you want to exercise, laying out your workout clothes the night before, or choosing an accessible location removes barriers and lowers resistance. The process of breaking habits down into small, manageable chunks is crucial. Instead of overwhelming yourself with a huge goal like writing a 2,000-word article or running 5 miles on your first day, begin with a tiny action. Write a single sentence or take a 5-minute walk. These micro steps may seem insignificant on their own, but they are powerful because they build momentum. Every small success reinforces your identity as someone who takes action, no matter how modest. This gradual progress fosters confidence and keeps you moving forward, helping you avoid the trap of perfectionism that often causes people to abandon their goals. This approach also helps you overcome the notorious all or nothing mindset. So many people fall into the trap of thinking that if they can't do everything perfectly, they might as well do nothing. But progress isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. When you accept that walking slowly is okay and that even tiny steps count, you remove the pressure that can cause burnout. You learn to celebrate incremental improvements and understand that consistent effort over time is far more valuable than occasional bursts of intensity. Another crucial aspect of making habits easy is designing your environment to support your goals. Your physical and social surroundings can either help you or hinder you, often in subtle ways. When your environment is thoughtfully arranged to encourage positive behavior, you reduce the amount of effort required to act. For example, if you want to eat healthier, having fruits and vegetables visible and easily accessible makes you more likely to choose them. If you want to read more, keeping books in places you naturally spend time nudges you toward picking them up. Automating decisions and routines like having a set wake up time, a morning ritual, or a dedicated workspace helps create smooth, effortless habits. Reducing the number of choices you have to make daily also plays a vital role in habit formation. Every decision consumes mental energy and willpower. By simplifying your routine and removing unnecessary decisions, like choosing what to wear the night before or pre planning meals, you conserve energy for the habits that truly matter. This simplification makes it easier to maintain good habits, especially during stressful or busy times when your self control might be lower. A powerful mindset that aligns with walking slowly but never backward is patience. Lasting change rarely happens quickly. Society often glorifies rapid success stories, but for most people, transformation is a slow climb filled with ups and downs. Understanding this prepares you to be patient with yourself, to accept setbacks as part of the journey, and to keep your eyes on the long term goal. When you recognize that each small action is a building block, you find motivation in progress rather than perfection. Even when obstacles arise, the principle is to keep moving forward in any way you can. Sometimes this means slowing down even more, doing less, or scaling back temporarily, but never giving up completely. The goal is steady, continual progress that accumulates into powerful, lasting change. By focusing on making habits easy and prioritizing consistency over speed, you create a resilient foundation for success. This approach is sustainable, realistic, and kind to your mental health. It prevents overwhelm, reduces stress, and builds confidence because each step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. In the end, the secret to building strong habits is not about pushing yourself to extremes or rushing toward your goals. It's about crafting an environment and routine that make the right actions as simple and frictionless as possible and committing to steady, incremental progress every day. By walking slowly but never backward, you harness the power of patience, consistency, and ease, a combination that ultimately leads to remarkable transformation and success. The third law: make it easy. Chapter 11: The Law of Least Effort. At the very core of human behavior lies an instinct so strong and automatic that it often goes unnoticed: the law of least effort. This principle states that when faced with multiple options or paths, humans will almost always choose the one that requires the least amount of work, energy, or resistance. It's not a matter of laziness, but rather a deeply ingrained survival mechanism built into our biology and psychology. Understanding this law is crucial for anyone who wants to build sustainable habits because it reveals why some behaviors stick effortlessly while others falter under the weight of friction and complexity. Throughout evolutionary history, conserving energy was essential for survival. Our ancestors faced constant challenges from hunting and gathering to avoiding predators, and their brains became wired to seek efficiency to preserve resources. Fast forward to today, and this same tendency to avoid unnecessary effort shapes our decisions, even when the stakes are less about survival and more about productivity, health, or personal growth. Your brain naturally looks for shortcuts and ways to minimize exertion, which is why habits that feel hard or cumbersome rarely last. Uh, The key to harnessing the law of least effort is to reduce friction, those invisible barriers that make starting or maintaining a habit harder than it needs to be. Friction appears in many forms: cluttered environments, complicated routines, unclear instructions, or even the need to make too many decisions before taking action. Each obstacle adds resistance, draining your motivation and increasing the likelihood that you'll procrastinate or give up. For example, if you want to build a habit of daily exercise, you can drastically reduce friction by laying out your workout clothes the night before or choosing exercises that require no equipment. If your gym is close to your home or workplace, you remove the barrier of travel time. Similarly, if your goal is to eat healthier, keeping fresh fruits and vegetables washed and ready to eat within easy reach eliminates the effort needed to prepare snacks, making it easier to choose the good over the bad. Environment design is one of the most powerful ways to apply this law. Your surroundings can either create friction or remove it. An environment that makes positive habits obvious, visible, and easy encourages you to act without having to rely on willpower or motivation. Conversely, environments that are cluttered with distractions or temptations increase friction, making it harder to stay on track. For example, putting your phone on silent and out of sight during work hours reduces distractions, making it easier to focus. Removing junk food from your kitchen and replacing it with healthy options creates a space where good choices are the easiest choices. Simplifying your routines and automating decisions further reduce effort. Complex plans or ambitious goals can feel overwhelming, making it tempting to quit before you start. Instead, breaking tasks into small, manageable steps lowers the barrier to action. Automating habits, like meal prepping on Sundays or setting automatic reminders for meditation, removes the burden of constant decision making and makes the desired behavior nearly effortless. Importantly, the law of least effort explains why motivation and willpower alone are insufficient for lasting change. These mental resources fluctuate throughout the day and are often depleted by stress or fatigue. By designing habits that require minimal effort, you make it possible to act even when motivation is low. This approach shifts the challenge from forcing yourself to perform difficult tasks to creating conditions where good habits flow naturally. Adopting this principle transforms habit formation from a struggle into a process of smart design. Instead of relying on brute force, you shape your environment, routines, and mindset to align with your natural tendencies. The easier you make a habit, the more likely it becomes ingrained and automatic. Over time, these small, effortless actions build momentum and lead to significant, lasting change. In conclusion, the law of least effort offers a powerful blueprint for building habits that last. By consciously removing barriers, simplifying processes, and crafting environments that favor positive behavior, you harness the brain's natural preference for ease. This alignment creates a seamless path toward your goals, one where habits form not through struggle, but through thoughtful, intentional design. Embracing this law makes your journey to personal growth smoother, more sustainable, and infinitely more rewarding. Chapter 12: How to Stop Procrastinating by Using the 2-Minute Rule. Procrastination is a universal struggle that everyone encounters at some point in their lives. It creeps in quietly, turning important tasks into looming mountains that seem too difficult to climb. You might know what needs to be done, but the thought of starting can feel overwhelming. So overwhelming that it paralyzes you into inaction. The truth is, procrastination isn't about laziness or lack of willpower. Instead, it often stems from a simple but powerful psychological barrier: the mind's resistance to starting something that feels too big, too complicated, or too daunting. But what if there were a way to sidestep this resistance? What if you could trick your brain into taking the first step so effortlessly that it becomes nearly impossible to say no? That's exactly what the 2-minute rule offers. The 2-minute rule is deceptively simple but profoundly effective. Whenever you want to build a new habit or tackle a task, scale it down to something that takes just 2 minutes or less to complete. The idea is not to start with the full, intimidating version of a task, like cleaning your entire house or writing a lengthy report, but instead to begin with a tiny, manageable action. For instance, you might commit to washing a single dish instead of the whole kitchen. or opening your notebook and writing just one sentence instead of an entire page. This small beginning reduces the initial barrier to action dramatically. Why does this strategy work so well? The hardest part of any task is almost always the starting point. Your brain is wired to avoid effort and discomfort, especially when facing unfamiliar or challenging tasks. When a task feels large or complex, your mind often responds by resisting, procrastinating, or distracting itself with easier alternatives. But by breaking down habits into 2-minute actions, you circumvent that resistance. The task suddenly feels approachable, manageable, and within reach. Once you take that first small step, a powerful psychological phenomenon kicks in: momentum. Momentum is the force that carries you forward once you begin, and it's often easier to keep going than to start from zero. More often than not, you'll find yourself naturally continuing beyond the 2-minute mark, cleaning more dishes, writing more sentences, or exercising a little longer because the initial resistance has been overcome. The 2-minute rule leverages this momentum, transforming tiny starts into longer, more productive sessions. This rule also profoundly changes how you think about habits and progress. Instead of fixating on overwhelming goals or distant outcomes, you shift your focus to the very first, smallest step. This reframing reduces anxiety, builds confidence, and shifts your identity. Each tiny action you complete reinforces the belief that you are someone who takes action and follows through. Over time, this belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, fueling further motivation and consistency. Importantly, the 2-minute rule also acts as a safeguard against burnout. Because the initial step requires minimal effort, it conserves your energy and respects the natural ebb and flow of your motivation and willpower. On days when you're tired, stressed, or distracted, completing even a tiny task feels doable, helping you maintain momentum and avoid the all too common trap of giving up entirely. On better days, those 2 minutes often expand into full workouts, lengthy writing sessions, or deep cleaning sprees without force or pressure. The flexibility inherent in the 2-minute rule is another key strength. It acknowledges that progress isn't linear and that motivation fluctuates. It empowers you to do what you can when you can, without judgment. This flexibility creates a compassionate approach to habit building, one that emphasizes progress over perfection, presence over pressure. Over time, the cumulative effect of these tiny 2-minute actions becomes extraordinary. What once seemed like an insurmountable mountain turns into a series of manageable steps. These small wins build upon each other, creating habits that become automatic and ingrained in your daily routine. The 2-minute rule transforms your relationship with productivity and change by demonstrating that success doesn't demand massive effort from the start. It demands consistency, patience, and the courage to begin. In essence, the 2-minute rule is more than just a tactic, it's a mindset shift. It teaches you that overcoming procrastination isn't about waiting for motivation or pushing through resistance by sheer force. Instead, it's about making the start so easy, so accessible, that you simply can't refuse. This simple but powerful idea dissolves the paralyzing fear of starting, turning daunting tasks into approachable actions and paving the way for lasting success. By embracing the 2-minute rule, you build a sustainable system for change, one that honors your natural rhythms, reduces overwhelm, and fosters unstoppable momentum. You learn that progress is built on the foundation of small, deliberate steps, and that every journey toward growth begins with a single, simple action. This insight empowers you to defeat procrastination, cultivate new habits, and move steadily toward your most meaningful goals, 2 minutes at a time. Chapter 13: How to Make Good Habits Inevitable and Bad Habits Impossible. One of the biggest challenges in personal growth and self-improvement is the ongoing struggle between the habits you want to build and the ones you want to break. It often feels like a constant battle. Good habits require effort and discipline, while bad habits seem to pull you back effortlessly, almost like they have a life of their own. But what if you could change the rules of this battle? What if instead of relying solely on willpower or motivation, you could design your life in such a way that good habits become unavoidable and bad habits become practically impossible? This chapter dives deep into the strategies and mindset shifts needed to tip the scales in your favor, showing you how to use the power of environment and systems to make positive behaviors automatic and negative ones nearly extinct. At the heart of this approach is a simple but transformative insight. Your habits don't happen in isolation. They are deeply shaped by your surroundings, routines, social circles, and the cues that constantly influence your behavior. Instead of trying to fight bad habits through sheer willpower, which is often unreliable and exhausting, you can reshape the context around you to steer your behavior in the right direction. This means making good habits so easy, obvious, and accessible that you naturally gravitate toward them, while simultaneously making bad habits difficult, inconvenient, or invisible. One of the most effective ways to make bad habits impossible is to remove or drastically reduce exposure to their triggers. Our habits are often driven by the environment and the cues we encounter daily. If you want to stop snacking on junk food, simply clearing your kitchen and workspace of unhealthy snacks removes the temptation before it even arises. When those tempting triggers are no longer within arm's reach, you don't have to battle your willpower every time cravings hit. The same principle applies to digital distractions. Uninstalling addictive apps, turning off notifications, or using website blockers creates real barriers that protect your focus and time. On the flip side, you want to make good habits as visible and accessible as possible. This means strategically placing reminders and tools that prompt the desired behavior. For example, if you want to read more, leaving a book on your bedside table or desk makes it more likely you'll pick it up. If your goal is to exercise regularly, having your gym clothes laid out where you see them first thing in the morning removes excuses and jumpstarts action. These environmental tweaks act as gentle nudges, turning habits into automatic responses rather than decisions that require mental effort. Creating commitment devices is another powerful tool to make good habits inevitable. These are deliberate actions or systems that lock you into your goals and make slipping back much harder. Scheduling workouts with a friend, signing up for a class, or prepaying for a service creates social and financial accountability that pushes you to follow through. Technology can assist too. Habit tracking apps, reminder systems, and productivity tools help you stay on course, giving you visual proof of your progress and encouraging consistency. Social influence is also a major factor in making habits stick. The people you spend time with shape your identity and behavior more than you might realize. When your friends, family, or colleagues prioritize healthy habits, productivity, or other positive behaviors, you're naturally inclined to adopt similar patterns. This is not just about peer pressure, but about belonging and identity. When the group around you values a habit, it becomes part of who you are. Surrounding yourself with supportive, like minded individuals is one of the most effective ways to embed good habits deeply into your life. Equally important is making bad habits inconvenient or downright impossible. This might involve restructuring your environment to eliminate cues or opportunities for negative behaviors. For instance, if you want to reduce screen time, consider leaving your phone in another room during work hours, using apps that limit your usage, or changing your usual routes to avoid places where you tend to waste time. By raising the effort required to engage in bad habits, you create natural friction that discourages those behaviors without relying on motivation alone. This chapter emphasizes a fundamental truth: willpower is limited and unreliable. Relying solely on discipline to fight bad habits and enforce good ones is like trying to swim upstream against a strong current. Instead, the key to lasting change lies in designing your environment and systems to work with your natural tendencies, making positive habits the path of least resistance and negative habits a difficult detour. This approach reduces mental struggle and decision fatigue, freeing your energy for what truly matters. When you make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible, you shift from a mindset of resistance and struggle to one of ease and flow. The right behaviors become your default, almost automatic reactions to the world you've intentionally shaped. You no longer have to constantly convince yourself to do the right thing. Your environment and routines do much of the work for you. Over time, this design-oriented approach creates profound, lasting transformation. Small changes in your surroundings and systems compound, embedding positive habits into your identity and lifestyle. You build momentum effortlessly, experience less internal conflict, and enjoy more consistent progress toward your goals. In essence, this chapter empowers you to become the architect of your own behavior. By thoughtfully crafting your environment, leveraging social support, and using commitment devices, you take control of your habits rather than letting them control you. This is the pathway to making good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible, turning your aspirations into reality through smart design and intentional action. The fourth law, make it satisfying. Chapter 14, the cardinal rule of behavior change. At the very core of every successful habit lies a fundamental truth. Behaviors that are immediately satisfying are the ones your brain wants to repeat. For a habit to truly stick, it must deliver some form of instant gratification or reward. Without that feeling of satisfaction, even the best planned habits can quickly lose momentum and fade away. And understanding and applying this principle is key to turning fleeting intentions into lifelong routines. Human beings are naturally wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. This basic survival mechanism shapes our actions and decisions on a subconscious level every day. When an action produces an immediate positive feeling, your brain rewards you by releasing dopamine, a powerful neurotransmitter that encourages you to do it again. This dopamine release creates a craving for the same pleasurable feeling, reinforcing the habit loop and embedding the behavior deeper into your neural pathways. However, many of the habits that lead to long-term success and well-being, such as exercising regularly, eating healthy, or studying, do not provide immediate gratification. In fact, these behaviors often involve discomfort, effort, or delayed rewards, which makes them difficult to sustain purely through motivation or discipline. This discrepancy between short-term discomfort and long-term benefit explains why so many people struggle to maintain good habits over time. The key to overcoming this challenge is to find ways to make habits feel satisfying in the moment, even if the ultimate benefits are far off. Intentionally creating small, immediate rewards or sources of pleasure connected to the habit itself can transform your experience. These rewards don't have to be extravagant. Often, it's the simple feeling of progress, accomplishment, or positive reinforcement that makes all the difference. Visual cues, like marking a calendar with a big X each day you complete a habit, provide a satisfying sense of achievement. This simple act creates a streak you naturally want to maintain, and light fueling motivation through the desire not to break the chain. Pairing habits with enjoyable activities, such as listening to your favorite music while exercising, can also create positive associations that make the behavior more attractive and rewarding. Immediate feedback is another essential component. When you can quickly see or feel the benefits of a habit, your brain solidifies the connection between the action and its reward. This feedback loop strengthens the habit and encourages repetition. Without this, it's easy to lose interest or doubt whether the effort is worth it, causing the habit to unravel. Ending habits on a positive note is equally important. If a habit leaves you feeling frustrated or dissatisfied, it becomes harder to repeat. Finding ways to conclude each session with a sense of accomplishment or a small reward, whether it's a moment of reflection, a self-compliment, or a treat, can increase the likelihood that you'll come back for more. Ultimately, satisfaction is the powerful glue that binds behaviors into habits. By making your habits immediately rewarding, you tap into your brain's natural desire for pleasure and reinforcement. This transforms habit formation from a grind into a cycle of positive feedback, where progress feels good and motivation grows naturally. When habits become satisfying, they no longer feel like chores or obligations. Instead, they become sources of joy and motivation, helping you build momentum and confidence. This shift not only makes it easier to maintain good habits, but also encourages you to take on new challenges, knowing that the process itself will bring pleasure and fulfillment. By designing your habits around immediate satisfaction, you create a sustainable foundation for growth. This approach harnesses the brain's powerful reward system, making change feel less like a struggle and more like a natural, enjoyable part of your daily life. Over time, this leads to deep, lasting transformation as small, satisfying actions accumulate into profound improvements in your behavior, mindset, and overall well-being. Chapter 15: How to Stick with Good Habits Every Day. Building good habits is only half the battle. The real challenge lies in maintaining those habits consistently over days, weeks, and years. Sticking with good habits every day requires more than motivation or willpower alone because these forces are often fleeting and unreliable. The key to lasting success is developing a system that supports your habits, keeps you engaged, and helps you navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life. This creates a sustainable rhythm that makes following through feel natural and automatic, even when motivation dips or distractions arise. One of the most effective ways to maintain good habits is through habit tracking. When you visibly monitor your progress, whether it's marking an X on a calendar, using a habit tracking app, or keeping a simple journal, you create a powerful feedback loop that fuels motivation. Each checkmark or streak becomes a small victory that feels satisfying and rewarding. Over time, the desire to maintain that streak and avoid breaking the chain becomes a strong incentive to keep going. This visual proof of your consistency taps into your brain's craving for completion and accomplishment, turning progress into a game that's both motivating and fun. Closely tied to tracking is the importance of making your habits part of your identity. When a behavior becomes something you see as integral to who you are, like identifying yourself as a runner, a reader, or a disciplined person, it changes the way you approach the habit. It's no longer just something you do occasionally, it becomes a reflection of your values and beliefs. This identity based mindset helps you persevere through challenges because skipping a habit would feel like betraying a part of yourself. Strengthening this connection involves consciously affirming your desired identity through self talk and small daily actions that reinforce it. Embedding habits into your daily routines and environment also makes sticking with them easier. Anchoring new habits to existing behaviors, known as habit stacking, creates a natural trigger that reminds you to act. For example, if you want to develop a meditation practice, you might decide to meditate right after brushing your teeth each morning. By linking the new habit to an established routine, you reduce the mental effort required to remember and initiate it. Over time, this repetition builds automaticity, turning your habits into seamless parts of your day. Flexibility and compassion toward yourself are essential components of habit consistency. Life is unpredictable, and there will be days when energy is low, schedules are disrupted, or motivation fades. Allowing yourself to adapt by doing a smaller version of your habit or adjusting the timing prevents guilt and discouragement. For example, if you normally run 5 miles but only have time for 10 minutes, simply putting on your running shoes and jogging briefly still counts. This approach helps maintain momentum and keeps the habit alive, preventing the all or nothing mindset that can lead to quitting. Creating accountability systems adds another layer of support. Sharing your goals with friends, joining groups with similar habits, or working with a coach or mentor introduces social pressure and encouragement that make it harder to skip your commitments. Knowing that others are aware of your goals increases your motivation to follow through and provides a network of support when obstacles arise. Positive social reinforcement makes habits more enjoyable and rewarding, strengthening your resolve. Rewarding yourself for consistency, especially in the early stages, reinforces your habits and makes them more appealing. These rewards can be intrinsic, like the satisfaction of completing a workout or the calm after meditation, or extrinsic, such as treating yourself to something special after hitting a milestone. Recognizing and celebrating progress helps your brain associate the habit with positive feelings, which increases the likelihood you'll continue. Finally, patience and persistence are crucial. Building and maintaining habits is a gradual process that requires time and repetition. Expect setbacks and plateaus, but view them as normal parts of growth rather than failures. Each day you stick with your habit adds another layer to your identity and resilience, making future consistency easier. By focusing on the system and daily actions rather than just results, you build a foundation that supports lasting change. In summary, sticking with good habits every day involves creating a robust support system that includes tracking progress, aligning habits with your identity, embedding them into your routines, allowing flexibility, building accountability, rewarding yourself, and practicing patience. This holistic approach transforms habits from temporary efforts into enduring parts of your life, empowering you to grow steadily toward your goals and become the person you want to be. Chapter 16: How an Accountability Partner Can Change Everything. One of the most transformative forces in building and maintaining good habits is the presence of an accountability partner, someone who walks alongside you, shares your goals, and holds you responsible for your progress. This simple but profound connection has the power to change everything about how you approach habit formation. When you no longer face the challenge alone, your chances of success multiply dramatically because accountability introduces social pressure, encouragement, structure, and support that you can't easily generate by yourself. At its core, accountability taps into a fundamental human need, the desire to belong and be trusted by others. When you share your goals with someone else, you create a social bond based on mutual commitment and trust. Suddenly, your habits are not just personal ambitions, but shared agreements. This shift raises the stakes in a healthy way. Now, your actions or inactions affect not only you, but also your accountability partner's perception of you. The fear of disappointing someone who cares about you becomes a powerful motivator, sometimes stronger than your own internal drive. This external commitment leverages the social forces that shape much of human behavior, turning motivation into a shared responsibility. But accountability is more than just pressure to perform. It also provides emotional support and encouragement that ease the difficulties of change. Your accountability partner becomes a cheerleader, coach, and sounding board. They celebrate your wins, no matter how small, making progress feel more rewarding and reinforcing your confidence. When you encounter setbacks or obstacles, they offer empathy, advice, and perspective, helping you overcome challenges instead of giving up. This emotional connection reduces the isolation that often accompanies self-improvement efforts, reminding you that you are not alone in your journey. Regular, scheduled check-ins with your accountability partner create a rhythm and structure that make habits easier to sustain. These meetings, whether they're in person, over the phone, or via digital communication, act as checkpoints where you report your progress honestly. The anticipation of these conversations motivates you to stay consistent and prepared, reducing the temptation to skip or procrastinate on your habits. This ongoing dialogue transforms habit building from a one-off effort into an evolving process of growth and adaptation, with constant feedback that keeps you aligned with your goals. Choosing the right accountability partner is crucial for this dynamic to work. The ideal person is someone who shares similar values or goals, and who is trustworthy, supportive, and capable of giving honest but kind feedback. They should inspire you without judgment and help you stay realistic about what you can achieve. Often, the most effective accountability relationships are reciprocal, where both partners support and motivate each other in their respective journeys. This mutual accountability creates a balanced exchange that benefits both individuals and deepens the commitment. Accountability partners also serve as valuable sources of insight and perspective. When you're deeply involved in your own process, it's easy to miss patterns or pitfalls that can derail progress. A trusted partner can help identify these blind spots by offering observations and asking tough questions. They might notice when you're making excuses, falling into old habits, or losing focus, and gently challenge you to course correct. This external feedback accelerates your growth by expanding your self-awareness and encouraging new strategies and solutions. Beyond one-on-one partnerships, group accountability environments can be equally powerful. Being part of a community, club, or online group with shared goals creates a culture of mutual encouragement and collective motivation. Witnessing others' successes and struggles normalizes the challenges of habit building and inspires persistence. The group dynamic fosters a sense of belonging, reducing loneliness, and providing a reservoir of social support that sustains you over time. In all these ways, an accountability partner fundamentally transforms habit formation. They bring motivation, structure, connection, and perspective that are difficult to generate alone. This relationship helps you resist isolation, overcome discouragement, and maintain steady progress, even in the face of setbacks and distractions. When you invite someone to hold you accountable, you tap into a powerful social force that propels you forward, making the journey of change more manageable, meaningful, and enjoyable. Ultimately, accountability turns what can feel like a solitary struggle into a shared adventure. It reminds you that you don't have to go it alone, that others are invested in your success, and that progress is best made together. This partnership often becomes the difference between fleeting effort and lasting transformation, showing that when you open your goals to someone else's care, you unlock a level of commitment and resilience that can change everything. Advanced Tactics: How to Go from Being Merely Good to Being Truly Great. Chapter 17: The Truth About Talent, When Genes Matter and When They Don't. Talent often carries a mystique, as if it is a secret ingredient bestowed upon a fortunate few at birth. This belief leads many to think that extraordinary achievement is reserved for those born with exceptional gifts, while the rest are destined to remain ordinary no matter how hard they try. However, this perspective oversimplifies the complex relationship between genetics, effort, and achievement. While genetic factors do influence certain traits that can provide advantages in particular domains, they form only part of a much larger story about what leads to true mastery and success. Biological predispositions such as height, muscle fiber composition, or sensory abilities can create natural edges in specific activities. For example, being taller gives basketball players a mechanical advantage, and having fast twitch muscle fibers can help sprinters excel in speed. Perfect pitch can make musical training easier for some individuals. These innate qualities can make learning and excelling in certain areas smoother or more intuitive. Yet having such traits alone does not guarantee high achievement. Without dedicated practice, focused effort, and effective strategies, natural talent often remains unrealized or underdeveloped. What often distinguishes those who are truly great is not just the raw talent they were born with, but how they harness it through consistent, purposeful effort. Qualities such as discipline, perseverance, curiosity, and resilience, traits that are cultivated rather than inherited, play a pivotal role in determining who reaches the top. These characteristics enable individuals to push beyond their initial abilities, overcome obstacles, and maintain progress even when motivation wanes. Knowing your natural strengths and limitations helps you make smarter decisions about where to focus your energy. Aligning your efforts with your inherent abilities can accelerate growth and increase satisfaction, while recognizing areas where improvement will be slower encourages realistic goal setting and smarter work. This self awareness is a powerful tool for maximizing your potential, allowing you to leverage your talents effectively without becoming discouraged by areas where you face greater challenges. Adopting a growth mindset is central to this process. The understanding that abilities are not fixed, but can be developed through dedication and learning. This mindset transforms how you approach challenges and setbacks, viewing them not as insurmountable barriers, but as opportunities for growth and improvement. It nurtures resilience and keeps you engaged in the long journey toward mastery. Shifting focus away from comparing yourself to others is equally important. Everyone has a unique starting point shaped by genetics, upbringing, opportunities, and experiences. Measuring success against others' natural gifts or achievements often leads to frustration and discouragement. Instead, focusing on your own progress and striving to be better than your past self creates a healthier, more sustainable path. This perspective encourages patience, self compassion, and long term commitment. Genetics may influence the range of your abilities, but they do not dictate your ultimate destination. What matters most is how you apply yourself through deliberate practice, cultivating good habits, and maintaining a mindset geared toward continuous improvement. Talent can give some individuals a head start, but consistent, focused effort and smart strategies allow others to catch up and even surpass natural advantages. Those who ascend from being merely good to truly great embrace this reality. They recognize that greatness is not a fixed trait, but a moving target achieved through persistent work and growth. They commit to honing their skills, adapting to challenges, and investing in their development over time. In the end, success depends largely on the choices you make each day, how you use your strengths, respond to setbacks, and dedicate yourself to improvement. Understanding when and how talent matters empowers you to focus on what you can control: your effort, habits, mindset, and environment. With this knowledge, you gain confidence to pursue your goals relentlessly, knowing that greatness is within reach for those willing to combine natural ability with intentional, sustained action. Chapter 18: The Goldilocks Rule: How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. Motivation is the invisible engine that drives your actions, determines how much effort you put in, and ultimately shapes your progress. But motivation is also notoriously fickle. Sometimes you feel energized and unstoppable, while at other times, even the smallest task feels like a monumental effort. Understanding how to sustain motivation consistently is crucial for long term success, whether in your career, personal goals, or daily habits. The Goldilocks rule offers a profound insight into this challenge by revealing the sweet spot where motivation thrives. Not too hard, not too easy, but just right. At its essence, the Goldilocks rule explains that people stay most motivated when they work on tasks that perfectly balance challenge and skill. When the task fits your abilities, it stretches you enough to feel rewarding, but isn't so difficult that it becomes discouraging. This ideal level of difficulty keeps you engaged, focused, and energized. It's where you're pushed to grow, but not overwhelmed to the point of frustration or burnout. Think about times when you felt fully absorbed in an activity, a moment when time seemed to disappear and everything else faded away. Psychologists call this experience flow, so that's a state of deep concentration and enjoyment. The Goldilocks rule helps you find this state more often by encouraging you to pursue challenges that match your current skill set while nudging you just beyond your comfort zone. If a task is too easy, it fails to engage your mind or body. The lack of challenge quickly breeds boredom, causing your motivation to plummet. You might find yourself distracted, procrastinating, or simply going through the motions without much enthusiasm. This understimulation leads to a lack of progress because your brain isn't being pushed to adapt or grow. Without a sense of accomplishment or excitement, your interest wanes and habits start to fade. On the flip side, if a task is too difficult relative to your abilities, it triggers stress, anxiety, and feelings of helplessness. When the gap between the challenge and your skill is too large, you may feel overwhelmed or defeated. This can cause discouragement and lead to quitting, especially if failures pile up without visible progress. The frustration of repeated setbacks can drain your energy and make you question your ability to succeed. The Goldilocks rule emphasizes the importance of finding and maintaining the just right level of challenge to keep motivation alive. This requires constant calibration as your skills improve or circumstances change. As you get better at something, the same task will become easier and less motivating. So you need to increase the difficulty or set new goals to continue experiencing growth and satisfaction. Without this adjustment, your motivation naturally fades because the task no longer provides that optimal challenge. This rule also explains why many people struggle to maintain motivation when pursuing long term goals. Goals that are too vague, distant, or massive can feel overwhelming and impossible to achieve, causing you to lose interest or give up. Breaking big goals into smaller, manageable challenges that gradually increase in difficulty helps you stay engaged and build momentum. Each small win fuels motivation for the next step, creating a positive feedback loop. In work and life, applying the Goldilocks rule means designing your tasks, projects, and habits to fit your evolving abilities. It encourages you to seek out learning opportunities, skill development, and new challenges that push you slightly beyond your current limits without crushing your confidence. This balance nurtures resilience and keeps you motivated through both successes and setbacks. Moreover, the Goldilocks rule sheds light on why variety and novelty matter. Doing the same thing repeatedly without variation can become monotonous, even if it was once challenging. Introducing new elements, experimenting with different approaches, or switching focus temporarily can reinvigorate motivation by resetting the challenge level and engaging your curiosity. Understanding and applying this principle empowers you to take control of your motivation rather than waiting for it to appear randomly. You learn to craft an environment and mindset that continuously encourage growth, engagement, and enjoyment. This proactive approach transforms motivation from a fragile, unpredictable feeling into a reliable force that propels you forward. In summary, Staying motivated over the long haul hinges on finding tasks that are neither too easy nor too difficult, but are just right. The Goldilocks rule guides you to seek challenges that match and slightly stretch your abilities, creating a state of flow and sustained engagement. By constantly adjusting the difficulty of your goals and habits as you grow, you build momentum, deepen satisfaction, and unlock your full potential in life and work. Chapter 19: The Downside of Creating Good Habits. Good habits are often celebrated as the cornerstone of personal growth and success. They free up mental energy, reduce decision fatigue, and help you make steady progress toward your goals with minimal effort. But as powerful as habits can be, they are not without their drawbacks. Developing good habits is not an automatic guarantee of improvement or fulfillment. In fact, if left unchecked, habits can introduce challenges and limitations that quietly undermine your growth and well being. Understanding these potential downsides is essential to using habits wisely and avoiding common pitfalls. One of the fundamental characteristics of habits is that they operate automatically, often below the level of conscious awareness. This automaticity is what makes habits efficient and effortless. They allow you to perform repeated actions without expending mental resources on each decision. However, this same quality can lead to complacency. When habits become deeply ingrained, you may stop critically examining whether they still align with your current values, priorities, or goals. What was once a positive habit can become a mindless routine, performed out of inertia rather than intentional choice. Over time, this can cause you to drift away from your desired path without realizing it. Furthermore, habits are notoriously resistant to change because they are built on strong neural pathways created through repetition. This persistence is advantageous for maintaining beneficial routines, but it also means that modifying or breaking habits, no matter how good or bad, requires significant effort. Even positive habits can become obstacles when circumstances change or when they no longer serve your best interests. For example, a rigorous workout schedule that once pushed you toward health and fitness can become detrimental if it prevents adequate rest, leading to burnout or injury. The very structure and stability that habits provide can become a form of rigidity, limiting your ability to adapt flexibly to new challenges or shifting priorities. Another important downside is that habits can sometimes mask deeper emotional or psychological issues. When behaviors become habitual, they can serve as coping mechanisms that distract from addressing root causes of stress, anxiety, or dissatisfaction. For instance, habitual overeating, excessive screen time, or procrastination might provide temporary relief but ultimately avoid confronting underlying feelings or problems. Focusing solely on changing surface habits without increasing self awareness or addressing these deeper issues can lead to superficial or short lived improvements. The identity formed around habits can also create limitations. When your sense of self becomes tightly linked to certain habits, you may experience what's known as identity foreclosure. This occurs when you define yourself so strongly by your habits that you resist change, exploration, or growth outside that identity. For example, someone who sees themselves exclusively as a runner might reject other forms of exercise or neglect rest days, even when it would be beneficial. This narrow self definition can create blind spots and hinder your ability to evolve and develop a more well rounded life. Moreover, habits can create blind spots in decision making and creativity. Because habits allow you to act on autopilot, you may fail to notice opportunities for innovation, reflection, or improvement. This habitual mode of operating can lead to stagnation if you stop questioning your routines or experimenting with new approaches. True growth requires both the stability that habits provide and the conscious effort to reflect, adjust, and explore new paths. Without this balance, habits may become chains that limit your potential rather than wings that help you soar. Another subtle but significant downside of relying too heavily on habits is the potential loss of mindfulness and agency. While habits save mental energy and simplify daily life, they can also cause you to go through the motions without fully engaging your awareness, values, or intentions. This autopilot living can reduce your overall satisfaction and sense of meaning. When you're not consciously choosing your actions, You risk drifting through life without creating the rich, intentional experiences that bring fulfillment. Understanding these downsides does not mean abandoning habits or viewing them as inherently negative. Instead, it's a call for a more nuanced and mindful approach to habit formation and maintenance. Good habits are invaluable tools, but like any tool, they require regular inspection, adjustment, and thoughtful use. Periodically reviewing your habits to assess whether they still serve your evolving goals and values is essential. Being willing to adapt, replace, or even discard habits when necessary keeps your routines flexible and aligned with your true purpose. In practice, this means balancing automatic behavior with conscious reflection. Use habits to create consistency and momentum, but also cultivate awareness about how those habits impact your life. Seek feedback from your experiences and environment and remain open to change. This dynamic approach prevents habits from becoming rigid constraints and instead turns them into flexible foundations for growth. In conclusion, while good habits can powerfully transform your life, they come with complexities that require mindful management. The automatic nature of habits, their resistance to change, their potential to mask deeper issues, and the risk of identity foreclosure all highlight the importance of ongoing self awareness and adaptability. By recognizing and addressing these challenges, you can harness the full benefits of habits while avoiding their hidden pitfalls, ensuring they remain effective tools on your path to a meaningful and flourishing life. Conclusion: the secret to results that last. Achieving meaningful change is one thing, but making that change last over time is a far greater challenge. Many people experience bursts of motivation or short term success, only to find themselves slipping back into old habits, patterns, or mindsets. The secret to results that endure lies not in occasional intense effort or quick fixes, but in the power of small, consistent actions sustained over the long haul. Lasting results emerge from a system, a well designed process that supports continuous growth, adaptation, and resilience. At the heart of this secret is the understanding that success is not a moment or a milestone, it is a process. It is the accumulation of tiny improvements made day after day, habit by habit, choice by choice. These small changes might seem insignificant in isolation, but their compound effect over weeks, months, and years is extraordinary. Like drops of water wearing away stone, consistent effort reshapes who you are and what you can achieve. This compounding nature of habits is what transforms fleeting motivation into powerful momentum. Another crucial element is building identity based habits, behaviors that are deeply intertwined with how you see yourself. When your habits reflect the person you want to become, each action becomes a vote for that identity. This alignment makes it easier to maintain behaviors over time because you're not just chasing external goals, you're embodying your values and beliefs. Instead of relying solely on willpower or outcomes, you tap into a deeper sense of purpose and self consistency. The environment you create also plays a pivotal role in sustaining long term change. Habits are shaped by the cues and contexts around you. By designing your surroundings to support positive behaviors and reduce friction, you make it easier to stay on track without constant effort or decision making. This environmental support acts like an invisible force that guides you toward your desired actions, even when motivation wanes. Flexibility and reflection are equally vital. Life is unpredictable, and your circumstances, goals, and motivations will inevitably evolve. Lasting success requires the ability to adapt your habits and strategies to fit new realities. This means regularly reviewing your progress, learning from setbacks, and being willing to adjust your approach. Flexibility ensures that your system remains effective and aligned with your current needs and aspirations. It's also important to cultivate patience and a long term mindset. Lasting change rarely happens overnight. It is the result of persistent effort, resilience in the face of obstacles, and faith in the process. Viewing setbacks as temporary and inevitable parts of growth helps you stay committed rather than discouraged. With patience, you recognize that the journey itself is part of the reward. Ultimately, the secret to results that last is creating a sustainable system that integrates your identity, environment, and habits into a cohesive whole. This system doesn't rely on fleeting bursts of motivation or willpower, but builds a foundation that supports continuous improvement and meaningful progress. When you focus on the process rather than just the outcome, you develop habits and mindsets that carry you forward through challenges and changes. In the end, lasting results come from the quiet power of small choices made consistently over time, each one reinforcing your desired identity and nudging you closer to your goals. This approach transforms personal growth from a temporary effort into a lifelong journey of becoming. By embracing this secret, you unlock the ability to create change that not only happens but endures, allowing you to live a life defined by progress, purpose, and lasting fulfillment.